especially for early stage founders, I really suggest you refine and nail how you tell your story. And doing that well on social media and with other people can really help sell your product. But best salespeople on the planet, you don't think of them as salespeople. Like, you don't think of Steve Jobs as a salesman, but he was an amazing salesman.
Yeah.
So if you can tell a fantastic story, that can get people interested in your product.
Yeah.
And that is fantastic, generally free marketing, if you can put together really great content and really great story.
Hello and welcome to Goldwithgould, the go-to podcast for startups and entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Larry J. Gould, and today I'm joined by founder and CEO of the cool company, Zack Dugow. Now, Zack, cool, is it cool because you're cool, or how did it become the cool company?
I like to think it's cool because I'm cool.
Oh, right,
But
okay.
we became the cool company.
That's good because we've got things in common then.
Yes, naturally. That's why I was excited to spend some time with you today. We are creative, open-minded, optimistic leaders. And the word cool is an abbreviation. And
how cool, optimistic.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, it all ties in. And so we thought about what identifies our values and connects as we're building a cooler experience for advertisers, franchises, brands, users, publishers. And so we came up with the Cool Company.
Right. But it's great. It's a great name. So where I am at the moment, and I've been testing lots of people who I work with at Cornell and other people I'm working with, and I've been using, you position yourself as an adtech and martech company, is that right?
Uh-huh.
And I would say 80% of the people don't know what adtech and martech mean. But just putting that aside, there's so much jargon going around these days. So one of the things I'd like to do when we're here, because we are talking to startups.
Sure.
And so therefore startups, I don't want them to have to listen to our podcasts and not understand what we're saying.
Yep.
And nor do I, underestimate how clever and good the startups are. But at the same time, it's very important to demystify. Also, which I need your help on, is so many of our startups are mystified by the sales and marketing aspect of the business.
Yeah.
So I want us in this podcast to kind of demystify and sort of go through and give them guidance.
Yep.
So I've got my first question for you. So over to you now. Tell us, explain to us, what is adtech and martech?
Adtech, if we brought it down to something really simple, is if you're a company selling a product and you want exposure for your brand so people know who they are, so brand exposure, or you want to sell your product, so you want to acquire customers, you want to acquire leads, that's what it would be for a brand. And if you're a publisher or a TV station or a news channel or your CNN or your USA Today or Bleacher Report, ad tech means for you generating revenue through the means of advertising on your website or your connected TV application or your mobile app.
So are you selling advertising for those TV programs, TV stations and things?
So it's technology that facilitates that. Exactly. It's technology that facilitates the acquisition of customers.
Right.
Which is essential for startups, especially at those early days.
So one of the things, because I have looked in myself, what it kind of, and I am sort of familiar not to as much as I should be, but people are sort of a bit overwhelmed in the startup. And the startup, we call a startup up to 5 years, by the way.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily something just
course.
starting there. They're just totally confused about how they would even approach to even buy the service.
Yeah.
So can you help us with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as a startup, you want to have a few different means of acquiring customers. Let's say you've created a new watch company, as an example. what I advise people is to try out different marketing channels. And so as an example, trying out buying ads on Meta and Google search. And
can I just interject there? So again, some of the people that I'm working with are so brilliant. What they've created is absolutely wonderful.
Yep.
It's mind-blowing. But when you say, if it's really explaining, in the days gone by, not too far away, you could put an advert in a newspaper or a magazine.
Sure.
You can put all sorts of pay-per-click or all sorts of different things. But what you're saying, again, for the sake, and don't want to insult anybody, but if we could take it really down to basics. Because when you say, put an advert in Google, and I say that to people, and they say, well, how do I do that? So I know it's probably a bit, maybe, basic, but it's, please talk to us like we're from
Sure, no problem.
Mars.
Makes sense.
Okay.
So you would go into the Google Search Console and you would just type in AdWords.
Right.
And you could go and then it'll load something for you. You click on it and it will allow you to enter in.
So you're telling them what you do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can load in a budget. You can load in, here's who my brand is, my website.
Right.
And they'll keep track for you of, okay, I spent $10.
Right.
How many people saw my ads? How many people clicked on my ads? How many people bought my product?
Right.
And so what was my return on investment?
Right.
And that's really what you're coming down to as a brand who's buying ads through Google or Meta or the Cool Company. You can do that through our platform as well, to see, okay, if I'm spending money, how many customers can I generate from those dollars?
Right. And how do you measure that? Do they get reports?
Absolutely.
Right.
So you take a piece of code, and if you're selling, whether it's a B2B product or a consumer product, you put that code on your website and it'll tell you, if you're an e-commerce site, for example, it'll tell you how many people came from Google search or Meta, which is Instagram and Facebook, or buying display video and CTV ads from somebody like the Cool Company, and how many people visited your site, how many people purchased the product, to tell you, okay, how am I doing as it relates to acquiring customers? How much revenue are these? We call them channels.
What's your suggestion? I'm a startup. I've been going a few years, say, for example. Yep. So I think somebody who started up a few months won't necessarily start doing this. How do they budget? How do they, because they'll have no idea about cost and budgets. Can you give some recommendations about, for a startup, what they should think about, what they should expect? So if you look down and 4 people seen, or 10 people or 20 people, have looked at the advert, how should they be measuring it? You're a big expert in this.
Sure.
But I'm a startup and I'm brilliant at producing glasses of water, but I don't know anything about this. This is, again, what I want to give some guidance to them of what not to expect, maybe, and to expect. And how many times do you do it? Do you just do it once? If it fails, you don't bother. It's as basic as that, but we need to go there.
So before you even buy any ads or do anything like that, I would encourage the startup to know, what are my product costs? So what does it cost me to build this glass, as an example, and sell it? So, okay, let's say it costs me $5. I know that then if I'm spending money on advertising, I would like to have a return of over $5 as a customer acquisition cost, or I'd like to have a lower than $5 customer acquisition cost. It doesn't mean you're going to start off there. Think of it like an ongoing evolution and process. The numbers won't be good in the beginning. So meaning, we may find, say, what I would suggest is you start out with a budget of, say, even $10,000.
Right.
You may find, okay, I spent $2,000 on ads in Google, I spent $2,000 on ads in Instagram, and it was a customer acquisition cost of $100.
Right.
and it cost me $5 to make this glass.
Right.
That's not very good because it would cost me $100 to acquire a customer to make 5, right?
Yes.
But it's a starting point. And then it's a starting point to then change things and go, okay, now, what if I change the language we use in the advert for the glasses? Instead of it saying, big and clean glasses, we call them luxury glasses. And let's say instead of targeting people all over the world, we only target people in the US. And let's say now our customer acquisition cost may change and go from 100 down to 50.
Okay, so question, just trying to suggest, is that I'm a brilliant glass maker.
Yes.
But I'm not brilliant at understanding what you're saying. I don't know how to direct that.
Yeah.
I don't know how to change the words. I don't. This is where they also get stuck. So
Yeah.
So how do they get to do that? Who's helping them here?
So a couple of things. So there's a whole host of fantastic marketing consultants as individuals or marketing consulting agencies or companies. Cool company where we help people around how they budget and how they should allocate their media.
So that's part of it. Cool.
Yeah, we'll help them with their strategy and how they spend their media to drive a good plan.
Whole big mystery of this. Can you demystify? I'm coming to you and I want to know how to, I've got $10,000.
Yep.
And I want to spend it.
Yep.
What would our conversation be?
Well, first I would ask you a lot of questions of like, what do we already know?
Yeah.
Who are the existing customers? You may say, hey, they're men, 18 to 36. They make an average of $100,000 a year. Whatever we can already know is going to help the process a lot. Because I think people sometimes think about marketing like, okay, I want to get my name out there, potential customers. And really what you want is you want to be in front of the right people who actually can purchase your product.
That's a big point you're making.
Yeah.
It's not just 10,000 people know about it and only about 500 can afford it.
Yeah.
So it's very, very important that it's quality as well as quantity.
Yeah.
Quantity is good, but it is quality.
Yeah. And as a startup, you don't want to be an advertiser like a Coca-Cola or Pepsi. You want to be, your whole market isn't the whole world. You want to be very focused on who do you want to be in front of. And so coming to somebody like myself or others with, here's who our customers are. Here's what we know about them. Here's on average what somebody will buy when they buy our products.
And you'll be knowing this, so they have to tell you this.
Ideally, if the startup is already selling the product, they'll have some information, ideally.
Yeah.
If they haven't sold yet, then or meaning if they're really completely brand new, we can help them with learning some of these initial data points by having kind of a broader approach, showing the products to more people and seeing who this messaging lands with.
Because I think that people really understand they need it, but they're terrified to use it.
Yeah.
And they're terrified to ask, what is the process? So it's very encouraging that you can come and you can help them there. You talked about $10,000. I'm sure out there, a number of people might be a little bit frightened of that $10,000. Is there a sort of a minimum that it's not for you to be dealing with? Or?
I would suggest, before even spending $1 on any advertising, that you're doing a lot of the free stuff first, meaning you're posting to your company's, social media pages and in Facebook, on Twitter, in Reddit, in other free channels and forums where people can learn about your product, and it doesn't cost you a cent to do that before you start to spend money to try to reach out to new customers. Because I will say that it is very difficult to be success. So think of it like successful in advertising. If you don't have any money to try to
you've got to. If you haven't got the money, you haven't got.
It's kind of like okay, can I drive the car if I don't really have a full engine in there? You're not going to get very far.
I suppose we can put the jars in the back of the car and go around the shops.
There you go. Yeah. Well said.
On that side. Okay, so that is interesting, and I do think there's got to be a level of spend, but if there's not a level of spend, there's got to be a level of effort in finding out information.
Yes.
And the information again is from, how do we find that information? Can you just, so just to make it very clear.
Very simple. I would give you just 3 places to go to see on how to start buying media. One would be just going into Google AdWords. Another would be going into Facebook and typing in, Meta ads for small business. And then another platform like ours, like you go to cool.co, COOL.co, and you can start even smaller than that. I'm suggesting $10,000, but you can learn some things even if you spent $300. It'll be tough to learn a lot, but you can learn about what messaging might be resonating, what might be getting some clicks and views to start to understand more about your customer.
Okay, so another piece of advice that's not exactly, but it's in your field. So out there, when I'm talking to people, they may consider spending money on employing them because all this is too complicated for them.
Yeah.
So what sort of, and there are people, I mean, I think I get every single day some marketing person, maybe I never get less than 20 a week of people offering to do the marketing for us. Can you give some sort of advice, again, how people should deal with all these lots and lots of online stuff? We can get you so many appointments, we can sell you so many things. That is really, really making people really nervous, because it's making them feel, because I'm talking to them saying, well, why have you not considered contacting them and just asking them what the service is? Then you'll learn that way. And maybe that's the way to do it.
I would be, there's a lot of companies, I probably get like 50 of those a week of companies that reach out and say, hey, we'll get you X number of qualified leads and things like that. I would really encourage you to not be as responsive to like the cold outreaches that you'd be getting.
Right.
And instead speak to your fellow co-founders and CEOs that are in your cohort. Say if you're part of a Cornell incubator and there's 10 others, chat with people of who they've worked with. I take a warm referral on companies that have been helpful way more so than kind of a cold outreach.
I think that's another good, it's worth having you here today.
Yeah.
You are cool in a kind of a way.
Thanks, Larry.
Good. Okay, so once a startup has created its adtech and martech strategies, what advice would you offer for scaling these efforts? Sort of started it.
So if you haven't, and you do have the resources, I would recommend hiring somebody either in-house or an external agency who can manage this for you.
I'm going to ask you another question.
Sure.
Give us some idea of the qualities and what they should be looking for these consultants or advisors.
People who have worked with companies in your cohort, in your space, that have proven results in driving return on ad spend, and media. So, as an example, let's say you're a company that creates furniture.
Okay.
I would look for somebody who has proven experience having sold furniture called at least a 3x return on ad spend for different businesses, because their ramp and their ability to do that successfully for you is going to be much higher.
And where do you suggest they look for that person?
I think LinkedIn's actually a great place.
LinkedIn.
You can if you put out a posting for either a consultant or a full-time role on LinkedIn, and you're saying looking for paid media specialists with experience in furniture, and you just put out there somebody who has a proven track record of driving a 3-to-1 return on ad spend, you're going to get a lot of applicants, and then you can kind of vet from there.
I think that's really great. Just trying to struggle yourself and just spray and praying doesn't work. But again, I think one of the great advices that Zack's giving us, first of all, now is where to get some help. Obviously, if you're a more established company, a company like Zack's company, Cool is a place to go to. If you're in a financial situation or earlier or smaller company, then again, try and get somebody to help you, and you don't have to employ them full-time. You can employ them part-time. and have a go at that. So hopefully that's very helpful. And again, I'm reacting to all the people. I'm saying, I'm seeing this guy and I've watched him on his podcast and so cool and everything. Tell me about what's your big worries. And these are the big worries, saying, we're just overwhelmed, overwhelmed about choices, scared about the prices, the money. And by the way, you're right to be scared, but you also must not just concentrate on the production or the manufacture of your service or product, or pay, you'll invest that money. You need money to invest in the marketing side. You really need that money to invest. And what I'm seeing with so many startups, you're kind of hoping that goes away. So you go back into your work or home office or wherever you're working very, very hard at something brilliant, but you're just forgetting that you've got to sell it. And selling it in marketing, selling's part of it. So please bear that in mind. When we finish this podcast, I want you to sit there and think, have I thought about any money that I'm going to try and raise or spend or invest? You need to do it. And if you don't, then you have to consider maybe other ways of doing it. And there are many other ways. What other ways could they do it? That's really putting you into. They haven't got the money. They've got a fabulous product. I'm being really mean to you now asking you this question.
No.
But, you've gone through
I'm very familiar. Look, I started the Cool company 12 years ago, grassroots. And so a couple things. If you have very little budget or almost no budget, I recommend a couple things. One is really focus heavily on creating great content for social media to drive a following there so that you can then put in information about your brand. And I would highly suggest a content strategy where you're putting out content that's relevant to the marketplace and people will pay attention. And then you kind of have ways that you subtly introduce your brand. So say we're a table company. We're writing blogs and posting videos about how do you find the perfect table. And that's independent then of us. It's just content that could be helpful. And posting that on YouTube and TikTok and all over social, which takes the investment there is time more so. You have to spend a lot of time to create great content. But if you're very bootstrapped and budget, I suggest doing it anyways, but I think that's a great avenue to drive awareness and then drive some initial customers as well.
And again, I don't want to be repetitive. You're probably scared or somebody will say, this is just too much for me. I can't do this. You need to do it. And the other way, again, going back to LinkedIn, is it's the part-time people. There's many people actually looking just for a few hours a week, but you do need to do it. If you ignore it, you're going to make it very, very hard for yourself. And if you do it and really pay respect to the marketing or selling bit, which people don't like to talk about, it's really dangerous. So,
can I add one thing to that?
Please.
Especially for early stage founders, I really suggest you refine and nail how you tell your story.
Right.
And doing that well on social media and with other people can really help sell your product. And you're saying, people are scared of the word sales, and that's often true. But the best salespeople on the planet, you don't think of them as salespeople, right? Like you don't think of Steve Jobs as a salesman, but he was an amazing salesman. You don't think of Elon Musk as a salesman, but he's a great salesman because you're not even thinking of them as a salesperson, right? So if you can tell a fantastic story, so Dollar Shave Club, I love that first video they put out with their founder CEO. If you can tell a great story, that can get people interested in your product. And that is fantastic, generally free marketing, if you can put together really great content and a really great story.
So one of the things that I do with the Cornell program that is called the Irresistible Program, and we're actually called the Irresistible Company, which is obvious why. And irresistible in the dictionary means too tempting and too attractive to resist. And so using that sentence, too attractive and too tempting to resist, is you should be questioning yourself, what is too attractive and too tempting to resist about this table or my product or whatever it is? If you work on that, and actually what's really great within the Cornell sort of community now, they're talking all the time about, is it irresistible? Is it irresistible?
Yeah.
And that goes for if you employ people and you're recruiting somebody to do this work, ask them what's irresistible about what they can do. So the irresistible thing is very important. Okay. How does companies effectively utilize martech if to know if they're getting a return on investment? How do they work with you? So there's the different levels we're dealing with as well. So they're coming to you. How does it work? So we have talked about startups, but as I say, we go to we consider you're a startup for 5 years. We're now established. We're now talking to that part of our community that are established. They do have money, they do have profit. So coming to you, how does that work?
So try to identify what is a key driver that will move their business forward. So that could be, for example, driving leads. So driving, say, if you're a B2B business and the marketing function is in charge of driving leads, and then they get handed off to your sales team who's in charge of converting and selling those potential customers. So we try to set up, and some advice I give is before you're going to even speak to a company that's going to help you in the marketing front, have an idea of what you want to achieve. So say you're like, okay, right now our business gets 10 leads a month and we convert 20% of those.
Right.
If we can get instead 50 leads a month and maintain closing 20% of that, our business can go from $2 million a year in revenue to $8 million a year in revenue. So when you're speaking to a company, I think it's great that's going to help you on the marketing technology side to drive leads. I suggest coming in with an idea of what you want to achieve.
Right.
And then let that company come up with a strategy to help achieve that for you.
Okay. So the other thing is, like, it would be great to have some examples of your successes with your clients. I'm sure your client hopefully won't mind. You'll decide whether to call them the name, but give us some sort of stories that they can hear from what you've done.
Sure. So one of our customers, Ballyhoo, one of our business units, Ballyhoo, where we localize all the advertising based on store location for retailers. One of the brands that we work with is Luxottica and Pearl Vision. And so we're driving for them well over 500 leads per. Sorry, go ahead.
No, where's it coming from, the 500 leads?
So we are buying with them. We buy ads on Google, through Google search ads, meta ads, display ads, video ads, to then drive leads that are going to their stores and purchasing glasses, Ray-Bans or Oliver Peoples or many different types of glasses. Or a customer of ours like the National Veterinary Association, we drive thousands of leads and appointments for them per month. So for them, what they want, because they have clinics, is appointments. And so we track phone calls. So we have created phone numbers for each store location.
Right.
So when we're driving effective leads, we're tracking phone calls and appointments that we set up for them. So that's their KPI is, okay, if they can drive us an extra 1,000 appointments.
Because you spent sending them to the right place.
That's right. But we also are tracking that. So we'll create phone numbers for each location, and then we'll keep track of how many phone calls did we drive, and then visits as a result, and appointments for them.
And then the company can say, well, this office is getting quite a lot, but not getting many visits. Is that right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
that's exactly
right.
right.
The office is getting a lot less, but getting more visits than anywhere.
Exactly.
I mean, that is incredible data to have. It's absolutely incredible data to have on that side.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can really, it tells you who's, it could be that you've got a receptionist that's wonderful in one location and terrible in another location.
Yeah, and that's a great thing then to look at in your business and go, wow, why is it we've got 300 phone calls each and appointments, but only half of the customers here sign up for a second appointment? Are they having a bad experience? Is there an issue with the doctors? Are they better doctors at this location?
And do you create that data
So we'll give them that data. We'll help them with the and work with them to also get from them, because they may have the internal data of who rebooked a second appointment. But I think that's what then it's really important to look at from their own business of like, hey, how can we improve things? And we've been able to help point out those insights, which are very helpful for them.
It's gold. That not for Gould, with Gould. During your cool career, because and you've had quite a career, could you tell us what your biggest challenges have been and how you've overcome that? People really need to know, because one of the things we find about our community is the loneliness of it.
Yeah.
Even if you're in a top university, and that's a lot better, because you are, really helped. But after a while, you leave and you're on your own.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about yourself and your journey? I mean, I've checked it, and it's very interesting.
Yeah.
But I think it's better to hear from you and how you're here.
Yeah. So it's so interesting because you can connect the dots looking backwards, but not looking forwards, as you know. Okay. So I never would have predicted we'd be where we are now 12 years ago. And because the initial idea for the Cool Company, which was formerly called Insticator, and that's now one of our subsidiaries, was a place where people could predict outcomes of sporting events and TV shows.
Right.
And we had pivoted into what drove success. Not unlike most startups, Twitter started out as podcasting, and they pivoted into microblogging. Flickr was a role-playing strategy game. A lot of tech companies especially have to move quickly, and the teams that win are the ones that pivot into what's going to drive value in the marketplace and for customers. Wow. And so we did that same thing. But to touch on that point you just said earlier about, the loneliness factor, it is if there's any advice I can give to early stage founders, it's that you can hear other people's stories. It is very hard to prepare yourself for the emotional highs and lows of starting a business. And having started your business. And certainly in the early days. And I am a firm believer that what separates oftentimes success from failure is perseverance. And because it is so difficult. It is so difficult to
stay the course. Have you got an example of some difficult time?
Absolutely. So 2014, we were at an accelerator program in San Francisco with a company, Orange, big French telecom company. Yeah. I still have very fond memories. They were super helpful to us in the early days. And we were a very small team then, about 5 people, and we had run out of money because we hadn't launched our product to help get kind of our next round of funding. And so I remember sitting with 2 of our team members in a back corner office, shout out to, I guess, Tani and Puneet. And I explained to them that I was going to have to, cut their salaries in half, temporarily, so that we could survive for a period of time.
And how did they react to that?
Well, pretty awfully. But it was interesting. So I'll never forget this. Tani, who's been with us now 12 years, is our CTO. He said, Zach, because you had to cut my salary in half, I can't bring my mother to the United States from China. And he started to cry. And then I started to cry because I felt like I'd failed him.
Yeah. And
so, but he said, but I want to stay with the company because I believe in what we're doing. And so then actually all 3 of us were crying.
I think I'm feeling
all three of us were crying.
If that's Andrew over there who does or organizes,
no, this is real life. This is how it goes, right?
No,
so
it's cool.
Thanks, Larry. So all 3 of us were crying in a room in San Francisco in 2014, and we, banded together. We persevered together. We were able to kind of work hard, figure out the problems, to then get our product launched, unlock some additional financing, which then helped us then, grow and iterate and so on. But if they had said, hey, Zach, thanks so much, but, I just can't do that, we would have been pretty screwed. Yeah. So I say that just like the emotional highs and lows from the early days are really difficult. And if you can find a group of people that believe in what you're doing, and then you bleed together, it's like you go to war together, so you become, brothers and sisters. I think that's some of like what makes the DNA of companies great.
Yeah. So I mean, with all the technologies and all the processes, if it's about being a leader, isn't it? And it's also about respecting your team. And that there's a huge part on that side. Zack, thank you for joining us. Please let the people know where they can find you, where the cool place is that Zack is to be found.
You can find me, and great to be here, Larry. You can find me at cool.co, or you can ping me on LinkedIn, Zack Dugow. Just shoot me a ping. Happy to be helpful. I am today. The company is where it is because we had a lot of people who were tremendously helpful in our early days for no other reason than they wanted to be helpful, and they didn't get anything out of it. So I believe in paying that forward.
Okay. And so thank you, everybody, for listening. Make sure to like, comment on the subscribe, and remember that he's Mr. Cool, but I'm Mr. Irresistible. Too tempting and too attractive to
Mr. Irresistible and Mr. Cool. We're a pretty good combo.
Yeah, okay. So wishing you every success and good luck. Looking forward to seeing you soon.